My name's Carl Hinder and you're listening to the Good to Go podcast, the podcast for salon and spa owners who want to grow. The only thing stopping you is you. Welcome to episode 3. Today I'm going to talk to you about recession. I guess we're going to call this the Recession Session. We'll also touch on other things like interest rates and the energy crisis, but ultimately it's all part of the recession. But first of all, whilst we acknowledge that there's a recession in our economy, we've got to understand what that really means. And essentially, all it means is that the economy is shrinking or the economy is not growing. It's actually a little bit smaller than it was a few months ago. Economists and sometimes politicians term this as 2 quarters of decline, where the economy hasn't been growing as quickly as it used to. But I think for us, that's where this negativity has to stop. And that's why I wanted to have this session on the Good to Go podcast. Because when we look at this in real terms, if we look at the UK economy as a whole, it's worth £3.2 trillion. Yeah, £3.2 trillion. And the USA economy, well, $23 trillion. And there's no shortage of money, guys. That's the point that we have to kind of get in our minds as business people. There is no shortage of money at all. What there is a shortage of is positive outlook, of positive attitude. And that's because we are watching, the news channels and we're watching social media and we're listening to other negative business owners. And that, in my mind, is more damaging than the actual effects of a recession. And I was thinking, how can I explain this? How can I say something that makes a little bit of sense? Well, I was thinking of it like this. Imagine that you went to a supermarket and they had taken one slice out of all of the bread, all the sliced breads, and they took one slice out and, threw it away. So you would now be in recession of your bread. You'd have a bread recession, guys. But you would still have an awful lot of bread. There would still be more bread than you could ever eat. Okay? There would still be bread everywhere that you looked. And that is what I want you to focus on. You have to understand that people who had money before this recession still have money. And the people who didn't have money before the recession still don't have money. Nothing has changed. It's just our attitude to it, especially as we're only in the early stages of a recession and the impact in real terms is very, very limited. So I'm going to say it a number of times throughout the podcast, what we have is a shortage of positivity. Because we can't build a business with people who have no money. We've never been able to do that. We can't do it in a recession. And I'm talking particularly about salons and spas. There might be some business models that could achieve it. But largely, in the salon and spa industry, we've always needed to seek people who've had money. When we build a business, maybe some people run a community business, which means we're running it for different values other than financial gain. When we try and do that, we make no money. And if we try and do that in a recession, we continue to make no money. You see, nothing is really changing around you. The thing with the salon and spa industry is we can't scale small amounts. We can't be like a supermarket or a fast food chain where we can have small prices and scale it almost indefinitely. So sure, we've got to have the right business model. But I want to talk to you more about recession attitude than actually developing a business model. Now, I was listening to an international coach recently in the last few weeks. And when asked about recession, he actually said, well, I spoke to my guys, we had a kind of a company meeting. We decided we're not going to take part. And I thought, wow, that is such a state of mind attitude, isn't it? It's almost like the good to go attitude where things are of a very high standard and you're ready for business, but perfection isn't there yet. Well, sometimes you got to be like that in recession. I doubt this international coach has all of the answers in place. But what he said was, we're not going to take part in that. We're going to just, we're going to override it with our attitude and our strategy. And that's what you guys need to be thinking about. Can you imagine the power of doing this versus being sucked in by the media? Because we know that the media, and I'm talking about television and social media in the main, but most types of media are now pushing you down a funnel of negativity. I know when I put the TV on, it's absolutely absorbing. And I don't mean in a good way. I mean negatively. It's exhausting just taking all the negative information in. I would say to you guys, stay away from the TV, stay away from the news, because it's not going to be any good for you. It's really about adopting the right kind of mindset. It's not about being kind of blasé. It's not about denying it. It's about saying, nah, I'm not taking part in this. And that isn't a negative attitude. That is a very, very positive attitude. It's a positive action that you're going to take. I'm not going to take part in it, which means I'm going to have to do some other things to get through this issue. I'm going to have to do some other things to circumnavigate it, okay? So, one of the things that I think you could be starting with, or one of the places I would definitely be telling you to start, is with your teams, with your staff. Whether there's just one other worker or 100 of you, you've got to start with your teams. And I mean literally training them and briefing them on the things they can and can't talk about that are negative in your business. Now, this is great practice. This is great practice outside of a recession. It could be about other things that are happening in the economy or politics or in the news. Anything that's negative isn't really going to enhance your business experience. And if it's not enhancing your business experience, and I'm talking about the client here, not just you and your team, then it's not going to maximize your return, is it? If people are coming and saying, it's not too bad there, but they're a bit grumpy, then it's not as good as, feeling the high energy of positivity in any business. And once you've decided that you're not going to take part in a recession, and I mean in a negative way, now you can take part in a positive way. And the place I would start with is thinking about, how can I benefit from a recession? Yes, I mean, really, how do I benefit from a recession? Because it isn't a negative place for everyone. So if you have a small business, maybe a salon or a spa or any small business, many of your competitors are going to struggle because they won't have the foresight, they won't have the mindset. Maybe they're watching the news too much. Maybe they have too much lethargy. Whatever their reason, they won't be taking enough action. That's going to mean that there are going to be certain things that will benefit you, such as when other salons close down, that means there are more staff available to you. Of course, it means that there are going to be more customers available to you. Maybe they're not going to close down. Maybe they're going to do what I'm going to warn you against in a few moments, and that is getting smaller, receding. Yeah, you're going to put yourself into recession, and lots of businesses are going to do that. This is your opportunity to take advantage. Now, when I talk about not retracting or not receding or not having your own mini recession, what I'm talking about is don't react in a negative way. Don't start laying off staff. Don't start having less days because you want to save on electricity. Don't start cutting back. Don't cut back on your marketing. Don't cut back on your staff training. In fact, do the opposite. Put all of your time and any spare money, and if you haven't got money, double up on your time into developing your business in the areas that maybe naturally you feel you should cut back on, or maybe you're watching your competitors or you're watching social media and they are saying, cut back, cut back, cut back. You are not in that position. You're in a different position because you're in a different mindset. Unlike everyone else's mindset, you're going to be able to analyze things. You're going to be able to put things into perspective. Let's say you have a really big bill. Let's say things are kind of really, really challenging for you. And maybe you have a £3,000 increase, let's say in fuel bill. That's really, really topical. Now, you can see this as you want. You can go scaremongering, you can panic, you can stress over it, or you can complain, of course. Lots of people are just complaining and not doing anything else. Or you could break this down. You see, £3,000 is a challenge for a small business. However, when you work it out over a year, even for one full-time employee, that's only about 70p a client, okay? Depending on the service, etc., etc. But 70p a client. Now, when you put that in perspective, that doesn't sound like my business is going to fall apart. And I could increase my prices by 70p and I could maintain the status quo. I could even be progressive. I might actually decide what I'll do is I'll actually increase my prices by £1. And I'll actually be ahead of the curve. I'll actually be ahead of my own business plan, and I'll certainly be ahead of my competition. You see, if you want to take advantage of this period, if you want to take advantage of this recession and come out even stronger, you've got to get analytical. And if you aren't analytical, as in you are not practicing analysis, then what's your other option? Your other option is to keep recycling what you already know. And we already know that most of the things you are already doing aren't working. So the best thing you can do is to put yourself in a positive situation, in a positive environment. And that really means you need to find out what you don't know. And you do that by mixing with people that do know. You mix with people who are positive, who have a great outlook, and who are tackling things like the recession and other business challenges head on. As an example, I run this membership group. It's called Massive Not Passive. And I'll talk to you about that one day, because massive not passive is a state of mind. It's an attitude. But what we do is we provide pathways for entrepreneurs. We provide them with tools so they can develop themselves. You know, there'll be no bigger investment in your business career than investment in yourself. So I'm going to ask you, don't take part. Refuse to take part in the recession. Say, nah, I'm not getting involved with that. That's not for me. I'm going to see things in a different light, and I'm going to change and develop my business. And so as we come in towards the end of the recession session, or as it seems to have turned out to be the nah session, I'm not taking part in this recession. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the Good to Go podcast. Now, next week, we're going to be looking at why you're going to be better off leaving the chair behind as opposed to being behind the chair. Now, that's the hairdressing industry, or getting out of the treatment room, or the cupboard, as I call it, because all the time that you are tied to your post, your business is suffering. And I promise you, it really is. Don't forget to drop into the podcast notes where you can pick up some useful links, including my pricing app and a link to my membership group. You can also find my details if you want to reach out to me, leave a review, and let everyone else in the industry know what's going on with Good to Go. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.